Testing. No, I don't. I still think y'all can't hear me. Okay, now tell me if y'all can hear me. Okay, you could hear me? Okay, that's so weird. Okay, now tell me if you can hear me. I'm experimenting with some different setups, you guys. So if you're just tuning in, give me a few seconds to get this right because I would really like this mic to work, but I don't think it is for some reason. And I think that might be the reason why. Let's try that. All right, now let me know if you can hear me. Y'all can hear me? Good. But now I'm coming out of, oh goodness. I think there's an echo. Give me 1 second. I I think I can fix this one pretty quick. Okay, testing. Yes. All right, we got it. We got the right mic working. I can hear myself. Um Unfortunately, it means there's still an echo in my ear, but I'll work on that later. What's up, you guys? This is another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm your host, Jazz Monet, and I, as usual, am just trying to figure out the best way to present my content to you guys. So thanks for showing up, thanks for listening, and for those of you in the chat, thanks so much for helping me out. Um, how's everybody doing? This has been an interesting day in terms of NBA news and results. Um, I definitely didn't expect the Heat to win. I didn't really get to see much of that game though. I saw the stats from it, and I was definitely expecting Adebayo to be at the top of the list, just like Adebayo came in and saved the day, and it was actually Tyler Hero. Not that he's not good, but he's one of those names that I feel like has been coming up all season as like, oh, he's falling short, he's not doing enough, and then today he was like this close to a triple double. um, Kelvin said he expected them to win. Okay, you're one of few. I think with the injury to Jimmy Butler, a lot of people were anticipating that game to go another way. Um, but they proved that they can do it. They proved that they have enough people, complimenting Jimmy Butler to get the job done. So props to them. Like I said, I didn't see it. So I don't know how it went. I know from looking at the numbers, it seems like the second quarter was kind of abysmal on both sides in terms of offense. And I guess the Heat just kind of took advantage, like, hey, well, if we're both gonna suck, we're just gonna suck less, get this W and keep it moving. Now, the other team dealing with an injury tonight that I didn't expect to win, my New Orleans Pelicans. And actually, when I first tuned into that game, it wasn't looking good. I don't remember what the deficit was, but it was low enough to where I was like, the Pelicans aren't going to get this done today. But the thing is, without Zion, they do have a winning record, so it's not like they can't win without Zion. I just think everybody expects every team to step it up during the playoffs, and it's like, well, the Pelicans in the playoffs won't do well without Zion. I think is what a lot of people are thinking. But after I tuned in, and I was kind of in and out because I had to do a guest spot on another podcast, and I was running around trying to get this set up. I was in Twitter Spaces for a little while. But what I saw was one, they limited the turnovers, so that did them a lot of good. Two, it seemed like they got a little bit more physical in the second half. Like, I saw them kind of taking it to the Kings a little bit, and the Kings weren't really responding well. And it seemed like once they figured out, like, oh, that's how we're gonna beat this team. Like, we're just gonna get in their face. We're gonna be aggressive. And once the Pelicans committed to doing that, it just seemed like that kind of sealed the game for them. So props to them. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what they do. I've been rooting for the King or for the Pelicans for a while. So hopefully they surprise us in the playoffs. I'm not expecting them to come out the East or anything, but it would be nice to see them make a good run, get the fan base excited, so on and so forth. Um, the East itself is wild, though. I still think the Celtics are going to come out of the East, uh, but there's just so many. How do I put it? There's so much room for unpredictability, right? Because on paper, I look at it and I'm like, the Celtics should come out of the East, right? It's time for Jason Tatum to get that. It's time for him. It's his time. He needs to get a ring. But then I'm like, the Knicks might surprise us. And then it's like the Orlando Magic. Where did they come from? Like, I feel like nobody's been talking about them all season, and then here they are. So it's kind of like, okay, what are they gonna do? They're kind of a wild card for me. I'm gonna admit I haven't been watching them enough to make any sort of predictions about them. Um, so yeah, but now that I think about it, we could say the same thing for the West. Um, I feel like who's the wild card in the West? Hold on, let me pull up these teams. Let me pull up these teams. I'll consider this part of our shout outs and call outs. My laptop is over here now with this new setup. So that's why I'm leaning this way. I could have sworn I had the page already pulled up with the brackets and stuff. And I don't know where it is. Um, JV says Mavs are wild cards. You know what? I'm gonna go with you on that. I'm gonna go with you on that because I'm excited about what the Mavs are gonna do, right? Which is weird coming from me. Like, I know I live near Dallas, and so I pay attention to what the Mavs are doing, but I ain't never been like, go Mavs. And maybe I should. But I've heard some people say the Mavs are gonna come out of the West. And when they first say it, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Like the first time I heard it, I was just like, really? Like not the Nuggets? Not even the Lakers? But then it's like when they start to explain their reasoning, I'm like, you know what? I could see it. So yeah, in the West, JV, I'm with you. I could see the Mavs being the wild card. Also, I figured out how to put this purple light behind my couch for you, JV, because like I wanted to be comfortable. Because the chair I normally sit in for my late night lives is not that comfortable, and I was like, I need to get comfortable tonight. It's been a long week. A lot's been happening that I hope I can tell you guys about one day. But I have a lot to talk to y'all about, but I've been so tired. I've been working my ass off, and I'm like, I cannot sit in that chair for another late night live. So we're gonna move it to the couch. I put the light behind the couch because JV said he missed the purple light. And we'll see if it stays on. But yeah, I'm gonna go with you on that one. I'm gonna say the Mavs are the wild card. The Nuggets are the ones that everybody's already coordinated, right? Like, oh, like the Nuggets have got to come out of the West, like even against the Lakers. But I feel like not that I'm expecting it, right? I don't expect the Lakers to win the series, but I feel like there's a chance. Last off season, so this time last year, the role players on the Lakers like really surprised everybody, right? Everybody was like, "Oh wow, where did all these people come from?" And this year, it felt like they took that same concept with the role players and actually turned it into a system. Good for them. And so I feel like if they can keep building on that, if we can keep active, if he can play, he'll have to play the best defense he's ever played in his life, right? So that's why I'm like, it's not likely, but it's not impossible that they win this series. But as far as a wild card, yeah, I'm gonna go with the Mavs as a wild card in the West. Nuggets is who I'm expecting, but the Mavs is that team where it's like, if they came out the West, I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't even be like, how did that happen? I'd be like, well, they did what they're supposed to do. There's a weird, is this shadow from the mic? I wonder if I turn this way. I don't know. I'm gonna figure this out, guys. I'm gonna keep working with this setup because I don't like this shadow, but I don't really know where it's coming from. I think it's because that light is like behind my mic, but it's not bothering me enough to get up and move it. If it bothers y'all though, let me know. I'll do anything for y'all. But anyway, I want to get into the hot topics of the day. And I'm going to be honest, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do show notes on this stuff. And every time I started, it felt like I was writing an essay. And I didn't want to get to the point where I was like writing an essay or a think piece. I want to talk to y'all about these topics, but it's like, as much as I want to like give y'all some cool graphics to go with it and have a bunch of bullet points pop up on the screen, I think I'm going to just speak from my heart. So while I have notes in terms of a few things that I want to let y'all know that are going on in the sports world, I don't have a lot of notes in terms of this is what I'm going to say. So a lot of this is going to be free thought, freestyling. And I hope y'all go along with me as usual and we can have a good conversation about these things. Hey, Boxy, how's it going? It's good to see you. Late night on a Friday. That's rare. I feel so special. All right, so let's get some of these quick shout outs and call outs out the way so that we can get into the fun stuff because there's some fun stuff to discuss. So first of all, Jontay Porter. I'm gonna see if I can move my laptop closer to it. Hold on. Yes, there's stuff in my desk falling down. This Jontay Porter situation. Let's talk about it real quick. So I heard about this situation probably a couple of weeks ago. And for those of y'all who are not up to speed on what exactly happened, Jontay Porter is a player for, or I should say was a player for the Raptors. He was a two-way player, and basically he did some really dumb shit regarding sports betting. So I'm going to read to you from this ESPN article titled NBA Bans Raptors Jontay Porter for Gambling Violations. They said the NBA launched an investigation into Porter in late March after sportsbooks noticed irregular betting on the over-under on the Reserve Center statistics in 2 Raptors games. In both games, Porter exited after playing only a few minutes. The NBA's investigation found that Porter revealed information about his own health to a known sports bettor ahead of a March 20th game against the Sacramento Kings. Another bettor, privy to the information, placed an $80,000 same-game parlay bet that featured unders on Porter's statistics and would win $1.1 million. Now, let me put this into perspective for you guys. As Davey is saying in the chat, that's Michael Porter Jr.'s brother. But most people don't really know who Jontay Porter is. Like, nobody is out here running around buying Jontay Porter jerseys or anything. He's a two-way player, meaning he played for the NBA and the G League. So for somebody to even have enough interest in him to be like, I'm going to put $80,000 on the under in terms of how many minutes he's going to play, that in and of itself was a red flag, you know? And then the fact that this bet ended up winning. And so it doesn't mention it in this article, but one of the things that happened, for example, was there was a bet, and I don't remember what number it was supposed to be under, but there was a bet for the under. And he was in the game, and then after about 4 minutes, he was like, oh, something's wrong with my eye, and went to the locker room and said because of this situation with his eye, like nothing was wrong with him physically, he just couldn't come back out. So it was just like really suspicious stuff like that. It wasn't like he hurt his knee at practice or something and then went and told a sports bettor like, hey, they're limiting my minutes because of this injury. Like, it was like him doing some really suspect stuff that even if you didn't know there were high bets placed on him, you'd be like, that's really weird for a player to do. So yeah, that was happening. Then it turned out that apparently he was placing bets himself through somebody else's account. According to ESPN, they continue. The NBA said it was alerted to the suspicious activity by licensed sportsbooks and an organization that monitors legal betting markets. Las Vegas firm U.S. Integrity, which works with sportsbooks, leagues, and state gaming regulators, and monitored the Porter abnormalities, said it is proud to continue to support the NBA in initiatives relating to regulated sports betting. So while some people are looking at this as kind of a bad thing in terms of, oh my goodness, now that sports betting is legal, look at what these players are doing. I think what the NBA is trying to show is actually the system is working. So not only have they been working to maintain the integrity of the game amidst the rise in legal sports betting, but they put checks and balances into place. And they're like, yo, the fact that this is coming to light, even though this is not a positive headline, This is actually a good thing. The fact that this was found, that it was realized, that we were able to investigate it and get to the bottom of it, this is actually a good thing. It shows that the system is working. So please continue to have faith in the game. And I mean, let's be real. If sports betting hadn't reached this level of legality, right? If it still was as illegal and inaccessible as it was previously, do we really think stuff like this never would have happened? The fact that it's legal actually makes it easier to regulate. It makes it easier to monitor situations like this, because not only are the organizations that manage the bets legal, but these organizations that monitor them and that regulate them and that can investigate them are also legal. So it kind of all works out. And I get why people are suspicious, but I mean, I would say this is a win for the NBA in the sense that they caught it. There wasn't a lot of money lost. This isn't something that went on for years. It happened a few times. They caught the guy. He's banned for life, which hopefully will discourage anybody else from doing the same thing. Now, what I will say is I do think that the NCAA and their comments regarding sports betting were kind of influenced by this situation. But that's a little bit of a different situation that, like, if we get to the end and y'all are like, hey, go back to that thing you said about the NCAA and sports betting, I'll go back and discuss it, but it's not important enough to discuss right now, in my opinion. But one day I do want to talk about that, because I do think that the NCAA, during their process of trying to figure out how to manage sports betting, they're going to realize even more reasons why they're going to have to go to a different model in terms of revenue share with athletes. So I would say keep an eye on all those stories if you're interested in college sports. Keep an eye on all those stories. It's going to get interesting, and it's all going to end up working together, I think. All right. Next shout out. Is it a shout out or a call out? It is a shout out. Shouts out to the NFL for how they're managing the NFL draft. So we've seen the NFL do various things recently in terms of trying to, in a nutshell, do the most with all their events. So one of the things that's been discussed a lot is the combine and how there's so many events surrounding the combine. Same thing with, I feel like there was something else. Oh, Pro Bowl. Pro Bowl has become definitely like, hey, fans, come meet your favorite players, have fun. It's like, it's for the spectators, you know? And while it is an honor for players to be named to the Pro Bowl, it's definitely for the fans. And it looks like they are doing the same thing with the draft. Instead of just having the draft, it looks like they are having a concert series featuring Big Sean and some other Detroit artists. That's where the draft is, by the way. It's being held in Detroit. And they're also hosting some community events throughout the draft week. So there's a lot of them, but I'm gonna tell y'all what some of them are. So according to a press release that was issued by the NFL, they said the NFL announced today a series of community events taking place throughout Detroit as part of the 2024 NFL Draft presented by Bud Light on April 25th through 27th. From events highlighting the unique role of football and bringing people together to projects centered around community greening and youth wellness, the 2024 NFL Draft community activations aim to leave a positive legacy in Detroit and the surrounding region that resonates long after the final pick. So we're not talking about just like signings and other opportunities to get people interested in the NFL. We're talking about events that are actually aiming to benefit the community. So, for example, on Saturday, April 20th, they have the NFL Draft Community Greening Project at the Detroit Partnership for Food, Learning, and Innovation. They're also having a Crucial Catch event, which is about cancer awareness. They're having the NFL Green event with the Detroit Tree Equity Partnership on Earth Day. That's on April 22nd. So they're trying to plant trees, do a lot in terms of the environment and greenery. They have the Character Playbook series, which if you haven't heard about that, that's something Dak Prescott actually participated in at one point. And it has to do with discussions on healthy relationships, positive character development, mental wellness, and so on and so forth for kids. So this is for like kindergarten through 12th grade. They're also doing a flag football event. They're doing a clinic as well as a game, and you can meet some of the flag football ambassadors. So they're trying to grow the sport of flag football in Detroit. There's so many things going on. There's a Little Caesars Love Kitchen event, so they're feeding people. They're doing a lot. So the draft is happening there, but they're also saying like, hey, while we're here, let's do a lot to benefit and jumpstart some of the initiatives in the Detroit community. So shout out to the NFL for that. Some of the stuff that they do in terms of helping people is very performative, right? So I'm gonna shout them out when they do something that actually has the potential to make an impact. Um, Next shout out goes to Applebee's really quick. They are the official bar and grill of the NFL, which I didn't see coming. But yeah, look out for promotions related to Applebee's during the NFL season. That should be fun. Applebee's actually does have some really good drinks and appetizers. And while I'm talking about good drinks, this is completely random. It is a shout out though. A friend of mine put me onto additive free tequila, right? And the first one that I've ever tried was called Insolito, and I had 2 shots of it before going live tonight. And when I tell you, that is a different experience in terms of drinking tequila. I did the typical salt shot lime thing, but like it was just different. And more than just smooth, because I've had some smooth tequilas recently. I don't even know how to describe it. All I can tell you is that if you have a chance to get your hands on a bottle of Insolito, and especially if you're a tequila lover anyway, do it. You won't regret it. No need to mix it. Don't put it in your margarita. Regular shot, chilled, dressed, salt shot lime. It's amazing. Like, I literally want some more, but I'm not trying to get fucked up, right? So 2 shots. If anybody's ever curious about like my drink order, whenever, like if I'm out somewhere and I see like a Texas Live somewhere, shot of tequila. That's it. All right. So that's pretty much it in terms of shout outs and call outs. I will admit, I have Stephen Jones on my list for call outs, but I don't really know what to say about him and his comments. I'm gonna repeat what I said in Twitter space a second ago, which is that I think Stephen Jones is one of the most tone deaf NFL executives I've ever observed. Hold on, let me see what this comment is from JB. I used to go to watch the Cowboys game at Applebee's on Cocker Hill when I lived in Dallas. Apparently, a lot of people get down with watching the games at Applebee's. Maybe I'm missing out. I've never done the watch a game at Applebee's thing, but like, I guess I need to make it a point to do that this year now that there's an official partnership there. But yeah, with Stephen Jones, like I said, he's one of the most tone deaf NFL executives because with his recent comments, which kind of point to how he plans to handle future signings, free agency, what have you, I feel like either if you're actually operating like that, then that points to more reasons why the Cowboys need a dedicated GM, somebody who's trained for that, who's practiced that, who has an interest in building the team, the roster, not just an interest in the Dallas Cowboys as a business, right? That points to an even greater need for that than I think a lot of people thought. And if that's not how he plans to operate, then he clearly doesn't realize the impact statements like that have on the fan base. Because, like, okay, as much as I want to talk about the X's and O's of it all and what should happen during the draft and what the next move should be that the Cowboys make. I feel like there are people who are speaking on that who are way better than me at that particular aspect of covering the Cowboys. One of them was just in the chat, might still be here, Vach. Vach is releasing content at a ridiculous pace that if you have any questions about what the Cowboys should be doing in the offseason, he's probably got a video on it, right? But let's talk about the fibs. Because one of the questions that I've gotten more than I expected to get this off season is, how do you feel? I feel like I've had so many people ask me, how do you feel about the off season? How do you feel about what the front office is doing? How do you feel about the news that came out about XYZ? And I think people are asking this question because they're trying to sort out how they feel. I think there are some people who really love this franchise, who are really invested in the success of the Dallas Cowboys and their players. And after watching what happened in the postseason, and not just seeing what happened in the postseason, but the responses to it afterwards, starting with Mike McCarthy. I think when Mike McCarthy did his end of season press conference, I think that's when a lot of the disappointment started because he didn't say anything in his statements that suggested any kind of remorse. He kind of suggested that he never had any concern about losing his job. It didn't feel like the coach's staff and front office felt the gravity of what had happened in the same way that fans did. And I think that left a lot of fans wondering how they were going to respond. Like, okay, you don't see this as a big deal the way that I do. Are you going to respond to it as a big deal as that it is? And what we've been seeing so far during the off season is no. So we all know that we can't predict what's going to happen in the draft. We all know that we can't predict the decisions of free agents, right? So all the discussions about that, it's going to be a while before we know who's right and who's wrong, and what the right decisions were. But I think the amount to which people are discussing it and the amount to which people are discussing the feelings surrounding those decisions just points to a desire from the fan base for the Dallas Cowboys to do something that lets the fan base know, one, we know we fucked up, we know we hurt you, and we're sorry. And two, we're going to do whatever we have to do to ensure that nothing like that happens again. And so far, the fan base hasn't gotten that from the organization. And I think that's why there's so much negativity. There's so much frustration. There's so many discussions about feelings, because this time of year, people are looking for that feeling of excitement. They want to be excited about OTAs. They want to be excited about training camp. But it's hard to do that when everything that you hear about this offseason, all the decisions that you hear about being made, just point to, man, y'all don't even care about what just happened. Y'all are not even going to try to do better. So yeah, that's my Stephen Jones call out. I kind of want to say, like, I hope he gets some media coaching or something. I don't expect any of that. I don't really expect him to give a fuck, honestly. We're gonna have to see what happens. This is gonna be a weird off season. There's nothing I or any other content creator can say to make people feel good about these decisions if they don't already feel good about these decisions. There are some people who are like, yeah, I'm patient. This is my team. It's fine. Like, we still got CD, we still got Micah. Like, there's potential, whatever. And so if you're one of those people, props to you. But there are a lot of people who are like, I don't know. These moves do not inspire confidence. And if you're one of those people, hey, you're not wrong. There's nothing that I or anybody else can say to, like, it's not like these are things like where I can say something to change your mind. Like the guy that I can't even remember his name. What was his name? The running back they just signed. I remember his stats. I remember he only got 319 yards on the season. And I was just like, who reported this? Who heard this news and was like, this is what Cowboys Nation needs to hear right now? Somebody say in the comments what this man's name was, because I don't even remember. And I kind of hope that once the regular season rolls around, I don't need to know it. I hope something happens to where this man becomes a non-issue. Freeman, thank you, JV. Royce Freeman. Yeah, like, you hear about moves like that. Like, there's nothing I can say to convince you that Royce Freeman is the running back that the Cowboys need. I feel like whatever credibility I have in terms of player evaluations and analysis, trying to do that would just ruin that. So anybody who... Now, okay, I will say he might just be a camp body. So you also don't necessarily need to be like super, super disappointed right now, right? I would say when it comes to moves like that, I think the reason why it got publicized the way it was is because there's nothing else to publicize. There are lots of teams, almost every team has like these random ass signings with these guys who are not very impactful. They're not expected to play a huge role. They're just camp bodies or whatever. Those signings happen with every team in the offseason. I think just with the Cowboys, there's nothing else to report on. So this became like a headline, right? But it could very well be like a camp body situation. You just somebody, hey, we're going to bring in, see what he can do, see if he can help our guys practice. Maybe he'll surprise us, whatever. I don't expect him to become like a heavy in rotation RB. JV said, I clicked to watch his highlights, but sneezed in the video. Oh man. That could legit be a true story. To have 319 yards for the whole season, hey, highlight video might be that short. He had what, two touchdowns? Two touchdowns, something like that. I don't know how many first downs. The number of first downs didn't even make the article, which makes me think that number wasn't anything special either. This is non-alcoholic. I'm not getting fucked up on camera. What is this? Sparkling lime and yuzu. It's a fever tree drink. They make like ginger beer and all kind of other stuff. I was gonna mix the tequila with this, right? But then when I had it, I was like, it's so good. I was like, I'm gonna just take 2 shots and then I'll just sip this during the show. Okay. If y'all have any more questions about how I feel about Stephen Jones, feel free to ask. Other than that, we're gonna move on to updates regarding Dak Prescott. And actually, let me just refresh a couple things to make sure nothing came through. I checked after business hours to make sure that nothing came through that was significant, but I just want to check one more time. So fun fact, y'all know how like I kept giving y'all updates and I was like, well, I couldn't get this particular document. I learned that for Collin County, you actually have to go in person to request documents. So the documents that I have been able to get, like Dak's petition against Victoria Shores, those were things that I got through other sources. So I can see through official records that there was actually a petition filed, but the actual copy of it, I got that from somewhere else. And other stuff I've gotten from somewhere else. But I was like, so for example, and we're going to talk about what this is in a second, Victoria Shores submitted a counterclaim. And I wanted to read the details of this counterclaim. I want to see what she had to say. But there's no way to do that digitally or electronically. So I'm going to have to make the drive up to Collin County and see if I can get some better information for y'all. Because I do appreciate the fact that y'all seem genuinely interested in the story and actually hearing the facts. So that is something that I'm willing to do for y'all. And if you want to donate to the gas fund, hold on, let me put my cash up in here. Cash app. I can talk, y'all, I promise. So when I say I can hear an echo and the like listening to the echo like really fucks up how I talk, that's sincere. I'm not joking. It's a struggle. Yeah, I forgot I got background music. Hold on, I'm about to put this on. Can y'all hear me over this music? It's like dragging a little bit. It's a little bit slow, but I'll go with it. Okay. I'm looking for my cash app. Give me a second. I thought I had it on here. Hold on, give me a second. There we go. So if you want to support the show by giving me a little bit of gas money to drive to McKinley, Texas, to look at these documents and to bring back some information for you guys, there's my cash app. Send me a few bucks. I know I got invited to a draft event, so maybe I'll try to make that trip on Thursday and stop by there and get some actual information from these documents for you guys. Maybe some cool content depending on who's at these draft events. And yeah, we'll go from there. So yeah, if you want to support me in that, there's my cash app. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So anyway, regarding these legal updates, and there's actually one article that I want to pull up related to this because there were a couple of quotes from the legal representation of Victoria Shores. So as far as the suit itself, I do not know what happened with the motions to dismiss that were filed by her attorneys. So remember earlier on in my coverage of this particular case, I talked about the fact that Dak Prescott actually named 3 people in his lawsuit. So it wasn't like he was suing Victoria Shores for extortion and then her lawyers were representing her. He named both her and the 2 attorneys in the lawsuit. So they were all defendants. Now, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, everything's happening so fast, not long ago, I'll put it that way, the 2 attorneys filed motions to dismiss and issued counterclaims. And I kind of made some assumptions about why they might have done that. I wasn't able to see the documents. But my assumption was that they were going to say, hey, we're attorneys, so we're not the ones, like, if extortion is taking place, we're not the ones extorting Dak Prescott. We're just acting as legal representation for Ms. Shores. We shouldn't be named in this lawsuit. And I didn't see anything confirming whether that motion was granted, though. Now, here's why that's important, and here's where I think the timeline got messed up for some people. So let me clarify a few things about this situation. And if the music is too loud, let me know. I've never really I've done the music thing like once, but let me know if it's too loud or anything. So let me clarify a few things about the situation. One, Dak Prescott has not been charged with sexual assault. I'm bringing that up because a few people have asked me, like, is Dak Prescott innocent? And I'm like, he's not on trial for that, okay? So the accusations have become public in the sense that we know that there is someone who's accusing him of sexual assault. However, that's not what he's on trial for. So there could be facts and evidence related to her account of the events that we never hear, that we never know. So that's the first thing. Also, please keep in mind that there were 2 cases in the very beginning. So when the motion to dismiss, when the motion was filed for non-suit without prejudice by Victoria Shores in Dallas County, there were some people who reported that everything was over, that it was done. And that's why when I started telling y'all about what was happening, I was like, hey, I wanted to wait until the judge actually granted the motion. And then on Dak's side, I let y'all know that there was a motion to dismiss, and I expected it to be dismissed. I really did. I'll say that prediction so far, it looks like it might be wrong. But I tried my best to clarify that there were certain things that could happen between now and May 14th that could prevent it from being dismissed. So, something that you need to keep in mind as we talk about what's happening with this case is that in the court of law, you can't really do anything without a judge's permission. So a plaintiff can say, I'm filing a motion for this, or I'm submitting a document for this, but they still have to wait for a judge to actually grant the motion. So when it comes to the case in Dallas County, last week, Victoria Shores had filed for non-suit without prejudice. In other words, she was going to the judge and saying, Judge, I would like to drop this case with the option to readdress this situation later in another way. But she can't make that decision herself. So what I was really waiting on after that was to see the judge grant the motion. And then that happened. It technically happened on Friday afternoon. But we, as in the public, we didn't actually see that document had been submitted until Monday or Tuesday. So that's what happened there. That's why some people got their timelines crossed. And some people were like, I thought it was already dropped. No, a motion had been filed, but the judge didn't grant the motion until Friday. And then that wasn't submitted to public records until earlier this week. So we had a similar thing happen with Dak Prescott's case in Collin County. So that's where the extortion suit was handled. There was a motion to dismiss that looked like if nothing else happened by May 14th, the case was going to be dismissed. And so my assumption was, hey, they dropped the suit in Dallas County. They're going to go ahead and let this die. I was wrong. You guys. It looks like Victoria Shores and her attorneys intend to continue pursuing this. So let me pull up a quote real quick, and I'm going to see if I can share it on the screen. If not, I'll do my best to read it to you. But there was an article that came out on the same day that a lot of people were really pointing to the fact that, hey, this suit has been dropped in Dallas County. There's a motion for dismissal in Collin County, and none of these news outlets are reporting on it. Which, whether it was completely over or not, I just feel like it's a responsibility of the media to keep people up to speed on what's going on. Mainly because so many members of the media went out of their way to publicize the fact that this was happening. I'm like, okay, as things happen, as different events happen with the case, I think if you're going to publicize the fact that, you know, Dak is being accused of XYZ, the least you could do is continue to keep the public informed, right? So let me pull up this article real quick. Because I want to read a quote from you, or a quote from the article for you, from one of the attorneys. And if you follow me on Twitter, one of the things that I said was, they said that they are going to continue pursuing the case for convenience, but their wording is problematic. And so here's what I found problematic. And this is a quote from Yoel Zehaie. He said, "We wanted to have it all in Collin for purposes of convenience. We are still 1,000% pursuing this case." He goes on, "But there's other causes of action that I don't want to go too deep in detail about, but that we do plan on filing soon. It's imminent and you will see it soon. So to answer your question, are there things that we can sue him for? Yes." The problem that I had with his wording there is that I've never seen a sexual assault case handled in that way, to where it's like, oh, well, we don't know if we'll be able to sue him for damages related to the sexual assault, but we can sue him for something. To me, it kind of takes the emphasis off justice for the victim and places it on to, we gotta get some money out of Dak Prescott for something. Now, I don't know the question that was asked, so I don't know if he was prompted to answer in this way, but I feel like if you're an attorney, you should be a little bit better at answering questions to where even if someone did try to bait you into answering in this way, you have a little bit of a better answer prepared that doesn't make you sound like, you know, just some money-hungry lawyer on the back of a matchbook. Because, like, I don't know. If I were Victoria Shores, I would be kind of embarrassed. Because whether the situation she says happened really happened, or if that's just her interpretation of the events or whatever, to have your attorneys come out and say, oh yeah, there's other things we can sue him for. There's other causes of actions. Oh, trust me, we're going to get him for something. It reflects on you. It makes it look like you're just chasing money, which a lot of people already think that. So then when you add statements like this on top of that, coming from your representation, in my opinion, it's just a bad look. If I were her, I would be a little bit upset about this. Not only this, but they've been making Facebook posts about this particular case. And I just felt like if it had been me and I had gone through this kind of trauma and it took me 7 years to report, I'd be like, are y'all really trying to get engagement off my trauma? Like, can y'all be professionals here? Like, why are we making Facebook posts talking trash about Dak Prescott? Like, y'all should be like researching something or interviewing people or doing something, right? Like, what are we doing? And so I don't know. I'm not a fan. I'm trying my best to be fair in terms of reporting what's happening and what's not happening. But as far as the moves and actions and statements that are coming from these attorneys, I just don't like it. Now that has nothing to do, well, I won't say it has nothing to do with who's gonna ultimately win this case and what the settlements will be, because that's for a judge and apparently now a jury to decide. But I'll say ultimately it doesn't really matter what I think in terms of how I feel about the professionalism of these attorneys. I'm just sharing that with you guys because you guys are my fans and friends. So thanks for listening. But anyway, let's see what other goings on have happened with this case. So as far as them refiling the case in Collin County, I haven't found any evidence of that. I still only see the one situation with Dak Prescott's extortion suit. I don't see any separate lawsuits filed by Victoria Shores against Dak Prescott. However, there is a counterclaim that has been submitted to go along with Dak Prescott's extortion suit. So basically they had the motion to dismiss that was set to take place on May 14th. And that's when I was like, okay, if anything happens before then, I'll let y'all know, but I'm expecting it to just be dismissed on May 14th and it'll go away because a lot of people have reasons to not want this to go to trial. But what actually ended up happening, I think maybe even the next day, was there was an answer to Dak's petition. In other words, Victoria Shores has submitted some kind of document or paperwork responding to the claims that Dak made regarding extortion. And that also includes the claim that her charges against him are false. And there's also a jury trial requested. So not only did she submit a counterclaim, but she's like, yeah, no, we're not letting this be dismissed. I want a trial by jury too. Like, I want to go before a jury and clear my name for extortion. So unless something else crazy happens, this case is going to go to the discovery phase. What's the discovery phase? Well, that's when all the tea starts being poured. That's when we start hearing about the defendant's past and what exactly she did for work to where she met Dak Prescott in the first place. We start hearing more about the nature of their relationship, which is another thing that kind of frustrated me. Side note, in the Facebook posts that are being put out by the attorneys, they keep reiterating the fact that, well, Dak is a liar because he said he didn't know who she was, and then a week later he said he remembered her. Let me tell you something. There have been people I've been intimate with who I didn't remember their name. And if you come to me and you say, hey, do you remember so-and-so? I might be like, no, who is that? But then if you show me their picture, or if you say something like, okay, remember that night you was in Baton Rouge with your homegirl at the time, y'all went to this party and then you met this guy, and then y'all left and da-da-da, I might be like, oh, that dude. So it's possible that's what happened. I'm not saying that's what did happen. I'm just saying I personally can understand how a person might say, I don't remember this person, and then a week later be like, oh, I actually do remember this person, depending on how they were asked and the details of the situation. So just side note there. But anyway, the discovery phase is where more details like that are going to come out. What was the nature of their relationship? What was she doing for work? Who were the other people who went to the strip club with them? What does Dak mean whenever he says his business as a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys has been impacted by these accusations being brought up by Victoria Shores? That's personally what I'm interested in, because when they started questioning people from the front office and within the organization, everybody was like, oh no, we're just going to wait and see what happens. This isn't impacting contract negotiations. This isn't impacting anything. We're just going to move on business as usual. Then you read Dak's petition and it's like, my business as a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys has been impacted by this situation. And I'm like, oh, really? How so? So, I mean, that's the part I'm really interested in. I don't really care who this woman is or where she came from, unless it turns out to be significant. But when it comes to some of the other stuff impacting the team, I am a little bit more curious, especially considering the fact that if it impacted the team already, it might impact them in the future. So, yeah, that's what we're looking for next. So like I said, I'm going to do my best to go and get some more information from some official documents. If you'd like to support me in those endeavors, that's the Cashapp right there. I will say right now with the cost of gas in Texas, it's probably going to cost me at least $50 in gas. Not to mention taking time off work, eating while I'm there. So I appreciate, like, I'll say every little bit helps. But yeah, I want to get some more information for y'all. JV says if they lose to Dak, Dak can sue the fuck out of them for those Facebook posts. In theory, he could. It's really irresponsible, in my opinion. JV also said, I've been thinking since the beginning that Victoria Shores and her lawyer are going for a settlement. And they might be. Sometimes moves like this are done to put more pressure on the plaintiff to try to get them to, drop the suit and just agree to their terms. But I mean, it's that he's not only has he been through a lot and he's mentally tough, but I'm just like, he's had to endure negotiations with the Joneses. And I know that's not the same thing as legal court proceedings, but they drive a hard bargain. And he had to deal with them for weeks, for months, in order to get what he thought he deserved after coming into the league as a 4th-round pick and doing so much for this franchise on a very measly salary compared to most athletes who would have performed the same way. So if there's one thing we know about Dak Prescott, he's patient. He's not about to rush and try to get through this just to please these people. If clearing his name means this takes a while, we know he's willing to take a while. We know he's willing to let the professionals that he's hired to handle these situations. So if their goal is to pressure him into a settlement by moving forward with these proceedings, that's a bad plan. Not with Dak. Not with Levi McCathern. Levi McCathern has dealt with some of the most controversial Dallas Cowboys legal proceedings. So yeah, this is not the pairing to try that with. Like, these two have been around the block too many times. They've dealt with too much. But and JV adds, I feel like Dak has far too much to lose to settle 100%. Because it's not something that will stay quiet. There are some people who can settle out of court and we never hear about it, right? If Dak Prescott were to settle out of court, everybody would hear about it and it would be a bad look. So no, I don't see that happening. So next thing we can look forward to, assuming nothing crazy happens. I have to put that disclaimer out there. Assuming nothing crazy happens, there's going to be discovery phase. There's going to be jury selection. And eventually there will be a trial, which hopefully does not happen during the season. That would be bananas. That, like, it's, oof. I don't even want to think about it. Zen Master. Y'all, I did a show earlier called the 3Gs Podcast, and Zen Master was another guest on that show. So he's got a sports channel on YouTube. Definitely check him out. Thanks for popping in, Zen Master. It was great chatting with you. I don't know the full extent of his content. I haven't watched it all, but we had an awesome conversation earlier about the NBA playoffs. So yeah, if you want more information about the NBA playoffs, that sounds like something that he might be talking about. So check him out. So yeah, that's where we are. There's been a counterclaim filed by Victoria Shores and a request for a trial by jury. So the next thing I'm going to be looking for is to see the response for the judge, like if there's another hearing posted, because there still hasn't been another hearing scheduled. I looked for hearings scheduled along with this case, and I still only see the hearing that was to determine if it would be dismissed. That hasn't changed, so that's another thing. It was moved to another district. So I think before it was in the 164th district, and now it's in the 199th. And I'm not sure about the significance of that. I want to say it has something to do with the district attorney being involved in handling the case. But I'm not sure on that, but I think so. So that might be part of the holdup in terms of these motions being either denied or granted as well. It's the fact that it was moved to another district, so there's another judge and or judges who now have to look at all this. So it may be that they're getting caught up, and we won't see anything else until they're caught up and they start making moves. So yeah, that's one of those little things that's a little bit more significant than people realize. But that's where we are. If you have any more questions about it, feel free to put it in the chat. And like I always say, if you are watching on Twitter, because I can never tell who's, like, by the numbers, I can't tell who's watching and who's in the chat, but it always seems like the chat is less active, and then when I go look at the numbers afterwards, I'm like, okay, most people are on Twitter. But if you want to be involved in this conversation with us and make sure that I see your questions and comments, come over to YouTube, hop in the live chat. We're a friendly group. We keep the conversations respectful, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about this or anything else that we discuss. All right, so now we're at the point of the show where I want to discuss what is actually on the thumbnail, which is WNBA Growing Pains. And let me tell y'all, I had the hardest time figuring out how exactly to address this because there are so many angles. So, just to catch everybody up who might not be like into the NBA, essentially the WNBA had their draft recently, record viewership for the WNBA draft, which a lot of people attributed to the fact that Caitlin Clark was being drafted. And even though everyone anticipated that she'd be drafted number one and go to the Indiana Fever, it was kind of like, okay, well, we just want to see it. We just want to watch this draft class. There's just like this heightened level of excitement for the WNBA. It really is a beautiful thing. So what the controversy comes in. Well, actually, do I want to get into that first? Sorry, this is where I should have had show notes. I'm like, is there anything else relevant? Okay, here's something else that I should say about the numbers. It's not just the draft. Caitlin Clark's impact on all sorts of numbers has been felt in the college level of the game, and it's already translating to the pros. Now, I'm not talking about her on the court game. I'm just talking about her being a women's basketball sensation and what that seems to be doing in terms of revenue and viewership and interest for the WNBA. So, for example, her jersey sold out, I think, in like an hour. And not only the Indiana Fever, but also some of the teams that are hosting the Indiana Fever are having to renegotiate contracts with venues so that they can hold games in bigger venues. Now, if you've never hosted an event in a big venue like that, usually what happens is you have to pay a deposit and there's a contract involved. So there's a really good chance that them having to move these games to another venue costs more than just having the game in the bigger venue in the first place. So in other words, the interest in Caitlin Clark is worth them possibly having to lose a deposit or pay a penalty to the initial venues where they originally booked, because the season starts in less than a month, right? So all these venue bookings are like over the next few months. The WNBA season ain't but 4 months, you know? So yeah, the fact that they're doing all these venue changes this close to the start of the season is just a testament to how much interest there is, how many people are on these wait lists, and how much and how hard people are trying to get these tickets to watch Caitlin Clark. So fast forward, news comes out that Caitlin Clark may be getting a signature shoe with Nike, which props to her. We're going to talk more about what that means for her in a second. But what that prompted a lot of WNBA fans to do was to kind of chime in about the fact that A'ja Wilson has been a force in the WNBA since she got to the league. And she works with Nike, but she's never been granted a signature shoe, which led to this interesting conversation on Twitter about... And I will say, this isn't because of anything that Nike said. This isn't because of anything that the WNBA said. There were people who were upset. I don't even say that they were upset. I think they were more so pointing out that A'ja Wilson had been skipped over. Because and I'm only speaking for the people that I follow, the people whose opinions I value. I hadn't seen anyone say they didn't want Caitlin to get a deal, or they didn't think that she deserved it. It was more like, well, if you can do it so quickly and so easily, like, why hasn't A'ja Wilson gotten one too? But there were some people who were responding to this concern over A'ja Wilson not having the same opportunity. And there seems to be a segment of people on Twitter who may or may not be new WNBA fans who seem to believe that Black women simply are not marketable. That would explain my low subscriber numbers. I'm joking. But yeah, it led to this interesting conversation about the marketability of Black women, the media coverage of Black women in the WNBA versus white women. And then that led to a conversation, probably because I follow so many people who have been following the WNBA for so long, but it led to this new interest in the WNBA and what that's meant for some of the people who have been supporting the WNBA literally for years. And I can attest to the fact that that's happening, because even and it wasn't even that long ago. I want to say it was at the beginning of this past WNBA season. I remember going on Twitter and being like, yo, who are the people to follow for WNBA news, especially when it comes to advanced analytics and predictions and things of that nature, you know? And I got some names of some awesome writers, media personalities, content creators, and some of those people have been able to take advantage of some great opportunities over the past couple months, and props to them. But there are definitely some people whose work is being overshadowed by people who are more popular for other things, and they just happen to be new WNBA fans. And they might not even be fans, right? Some of them you can't tell. So, like, for example, Shannon Sharp. I ain't never heard him talk about the WNBA before, but now all of a sudden his takes on the WNBA are getting all sorts of posts, attention, retweets, so on and so forth. Stephen A. Smith, he's spoken on it occasionally, But now all of a sudden, he's being treated as an expert. But I know for a fact that there are people who have been writing about the league, the history of the teams. They know the stories of these players, and not just the ones with the most followers. Like, they cover certain teams and they know all the players. They know what their college career was like. They know what their stats are. They know what their strengths are. They know what they've been through as they've been in the WNBA. And their work isn't getting the level of attention and shine that you would hope for. And so there have been some discussions about the fact that all these eyes on the WNBA are causing some people to get skipped over. Let me take a sip of this real quick. So let's start with this. Actually, I want to see if I have a different song. This song's been playing for a while. I'm so glad I moved to the couch. I'm way more comfortable. I might have to just stay on the couch. Let me see what this one sounds like. I like it. It sounds really weird on my end. I don't know if it sounds weird on y'all's end. I'm gonna have to watch this playback and be like, how did this sound? Okay. So I'm gonna say this regarding Caitlin Clark. One of the things that makes this a little bit complicated to discuss is the fact that we're not talking about a situation where an average white girl just gets a shoe deal. She's actually that fucking good. You know what I'm saying? Like, she actually did break a bunch of records. She actually is out here shooting threes from the logo. So, considering the fact that she is actually good, and on top of that, she's become a national sensation, not just a star, a sensation. Like, there are people who are not even interested in sports who are all of a sudden interested in women's basketball because they're interested in Caitlin Clark. So any company that has an opportunity to piggyback off that kind of sensation and the impact that I described to y'all earlier, any company who has the opportunity to do a deal with her, they're going to do it. They'd be crazy not to if they have the opportunity to. So I'm not going to be mad at any particular company for giving Caitlin Clark a shoe deal or a clothing deal or using her in marketing or whatever, because that's what companies are supposed to do. They are supposed to figure out how to make more money. I know we all want corporations to be a little bit more altruistic and philanthropic and considerate, but a lot of that happens as a byproduct. I don't think any of this any of those things have anything to do with Caitlin Clark or why they're choosing to work with her. And think about it this way, right? If they were to get a deal with Asia Wilson, but they never cared about Black women's issues. Like, Asia tried to put a spotlight on, the plight of Black women in XYZ way, and Nike was like, we don't care. People would be upset, right? So I think that's also something else that we have to look at. Like, okay, as much as we don't want to see Asia Wilson skipped over, is that really the best option for her, or is there something else that could even be a better fit? I think a lot of people are assuming that Nike is just the end all be all, and yes, they are one of the most popular brands in terms of clothing lines and shoe lines for athletes, right? But I feel like there's time to see how this all plays out. JV says, I'm not familiar enough with the WNBA to comment intelligently. I haven't watched since Cynthia Cooper, Dawn Staley, Swoops, and Lisa Leslie. Okay, so it's been a minute for you. And it's fine. You can catch up. Just go on Twitter and catch up anytime. So, yeah, I think any company that has opportunity to work with Caitlin Clark would be crazy not to. But here's the other thing. And let me actually use the Cowboys as an example, because I've seen some people say things about the WNBA like, oh, the popularity of Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever is going to help everybody. Potentially, it could help everybody, but probably not equally. So when it comes to a person or a team becoming a sensation and maybe not necessarily having everything to do with their accolades as an athlete, right? Because that's the argument a lot of people were making about A'ja Wilson. They were pointing to a lot of her superlatives, the fact that she's an Olympic champion, how long she's been in the league, some of the things that she's done that are significant, you know, the level of her game, so on and so forth. And they're like, look at her resume. She deserves a shoe deal. Okay, maybe. But what this kind of reminds me of is the Dallas Cowboys being America's team, right? Because I was trying to think of what I could compare this to in terms of other areas in the sports world where we've seen something like this. And I feel like, although it's on a very different scale, the Cowboys being dubbed America's team is a comparable example. Now, why is that? It's because they're called that, and every single season, there ends up being a debate at some point of like, are the Cowboys really America's team? And there's always some team who's like, well, they haven't won a championship since da-da-da-da-da, so they shouldn't be America's team. And then, you know, the educated Cowboys fans have to come back and be like, well, actually, the term America's team, one, is not a term that the Cowboys picked for themselves. It was given to them. And two, it wasn't given to them because of their championship. It was given to them because of the size of their audience and the fact that they had a larger worldwide audience than any other NFL franchise. And so for a lot of people, the Dallas Cowboys were the one football team from America that they were familiar with. So they became known as America's team. And that's like a very abridged, condensed form of the story. But I say that to say the same idea can be applied to this situation with Caitlin Clark and A'ja Wilson, where it's like we want to point to all these accolades and be like, here's all the reasons A'ja Wilson deserves a shoe. Look at her resume. Caitlin Clark hasn't even dribbled a ball in a WNBA game yet. How can y'all be, you know, putting all this pressure on her, all this hype? Where is it coming from? And it's like, hey, one thing about the world of sports is it always has been and always will be an entertainment product. At the end of the day, whereas we love the competition, we love the feats of athleticism, we love to see our favorite players do well, these superlatives and the championships and the playoffs and the Olympic medals, they all do mean something. However, when it comes to especially money decisions, it's gonna be about who can get eyes. Who can get eyes on this product? Who can get eyes on this event? Who can get eyes on this brand? Who can get eyes on this league? And so I don't think we should look at this as people discounting what A'ja Wilson has done, the type of athlete she is. I think we should take this as evidence from Nike of what they value. And you can do with that information what you will, right? But this is something that we should have already known. And this is something that's become, you know, more apparent. But in the defense of people who are kind of feeling a way about how everything's gone on, I'll say this. Oh, one of my lights went out. Oh, well, y'all can still see me. So in the defense of people who are feeling way, I'll say this. Because while I don't think the feelings should necessarily support any action on the part of Nike, which if they do give A'ja Wilson a shoe, you know, props to them. That would be great. And I would support it. But for the people who feel away, I think their feelings are valid and I think they should keep speaking on it, right? I just think we should maybe adjust what the focus is a little bit. And here's why. One of the very first episodes of this podcast that I did, I talked about the WNBA. And at the time, well, every year, there's always controversy over the low salaries that WNBA players are being paid. And one of the things that I mentioned was the age of the WNBA as a league, which at the time I think was like 25 years or something. And the fact that a lot of major sports leagues within their first few decades kind of go through a phase where things don't always add up financially for everybody to be like these crazy millionaires, right? There was a time in the NFL, there was a time in the NBA where even the star players had to have second jobs, where the CBA didn't exactly benefit players, where the media rights deals were kind of bullshit, right? And all those things had to be worked out over time. All these leagues have decades and decades of progress and experience with media rights deals and decades of support and generations of support, right? Like, I didn't grow up watching the WNBA. but my niece will. Like, I text my niece about the WNBA, but like there wasn't nobody texting me about the WNBA when I was my niece's age, right? Whereas with the NFL, it's like you got people who are like, yeah, my grandpa played football at da-da-da-da, right? The WNBA doesn't have that. Things like that make a difference, right? But while that is true, that every professional sport goes through those types of growing pains, one of the other things that I pointed out was that the WNBA was going to have to deal with at least two things that the NBA and no men's league would have to deal with. And that was misogyny and queerphobia. And the misogyny sometimes takes on the form of misogynoir, which is, if you know what misogyny is, misogynoir is basically like misogyny against Black women specifically, right? So misogyny and queerphobia, in other words, the discrimination against women and the discrimination against queer women, which a lot of star players in the WNBA are queer or lesbian. Even in the Olympics in 2021, there was a discussion of a non-binary player in the WNBA, and that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, right? So when you take that into account, I think a lot of people who have been supporting the WNBA, hoping for this moment where the WNBA starts to really increase in popularity and the audience size increases and the revenue increases and the media rights deals looks like they're going to get better. I think a lot of people imagine that once this moment came around, it would come either along with or after some victories in terms of the fight against misogyny and queerphobia. And what's actually happened is that Caitlin Clark has given the WNBA kind of a shortcut around that. It's like, we don't have to fight through this now. We can just avoid this altogether. Now, sometimes avoiding something may be a good thing in terms of, we don't have to deal with that. But for the people who are still going to have to fight those battles, in other words, they are still Black women who have to deal with the consequences of being unapologetically themselves, or there's still queer women who have to deal with various forms of discrimination, going around those issues to get the result that you want feels a lot like erasure. And so I think there are a lot of people who are just like, hey, while we're celebrating Caitlin Clark and everything that she's doing and what she's doing for the league and the growth of the league, don't forget about the people who have been the foundation of the WNBA, both on the court and in the media and on these websites and on social media and in the stands. Don't forget about us. Don't act like we're no longer important. Don't act like our issues are no longer important. Don't act like the WNBA doesn't still need to address certain issues just because we've been able to get this result without dealing with these two things, right? And so from that aspect, I completely understand why these people feel the need to speak and keep speaking, because you don't want to wait until it's too late. You don't want to wait until the train is all the way off the tracks. It's like, no, as soon as you see something going left, you want to say something. So that way, nobody can say like, oh, well, how come you didn't say this when blah, 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 blah. No, they're saying it now so that you know and so that you hear them. And so I was watching Dominique Foxworth and Bomani Jones. Shout out to Dominique Foxworth, my new friend on Twitter. And he said something online, and I hope I don't misquote him too terribly, but it was something to the effect of, you can't say you want this thing and then say, well, I didn't want it this way. No, you absolutely can say that. You absolutely can say, hey, I want the WNBA to be more popular. I want us to get more revenue. I want us to get more eyes. I want us to have more fans. But I don't want to do it by ignoring the issues of Black women and queer women. I don't want to do it by putting straight white women at the forefront and just keeping Black women and queer women in the background. Like, look, y'all just stay back there. We'll handle the marketing. We'll get all the fans. Y'all just get on the court and play. Like, we're just not going to deal with y'all right now. I think it's very reasonable to say that. I think it's very reasonable. So while I don't have any feelings about Caitlin Clark, getting a shoe deal. It's a lot of hype, right? It's a lot of pressure. And I think it's unlike anything that we've seen in the women's game up until this point. I don't feel a way about it. I'm like, hey, there's been a lot of sports figures that have gotten a lot of hype going into the league, and then they fell short for various reasons. Zion. I just finished watching the Pelicans play. And it's taken so long for him to make an impact on that team. People don't even care about him anymore. He's not even a star anymore. So, I mean, hey, get your bag, and when it comes to your game on the court, it's like your game is either going to translate or it won't. We have to wait and see. There are people who can analyze and predict, but we have to wait and see. I don't feel a way about it. I'm glad that the women's game is being elevated to this extent, and for that reason, I hope the best for her. But by the best, I don't mean I hope she wins everything. I think what would actually be best for the WNBA as a league is if we actually do see some of these veteran players really challenge her and force her to step her game up as an athlete. That's what's going to be fun to watch, right? So I can't wait to see these games. But something else that a lot of people have been bringing up, and this is where things get a little bit complicated, right? Because this is one of the things that I was thinking about, not even just now, but during the season when I started seeing the hype about Caitlin Clark, right? One of the things that I couldn't help but think about was that Caitlin Clark became popular at the same time as Angel Reese, right? They both kind of had this moment of creating the discourse about women's athletes and trash talk and the line, if there is one, between being competitive and being unladylike or having bad sportsmanship, right? And the two of them were involved in that moment together. And even at that moment, so rewinding to a little bit before this time last year, the whole conversation about what happened between the two of them could have pointed to the idea that we might get to this point. And here's what I mean. What actually happened last season was Angel Reese got a lot of heat for the "you can't see me" thing that she did, actually mocking Caitlin Clark, because Caitlin Clark, that was something that she was doing. And there were literally people who, when some of us would point out, well, you know, you're criticizing Angel Reese for doing this. However, Caitlin Clark did it first. And then there were some people who really tried to pretend like Caitlin Clark, they're like, no, she didn't. And you had to literally provide video evidence. And it's like, well, it was different when she did it. Like, they wanted so badly to believe that the thing that they were criticizing Angel Reese for, although Caitlin Clark did the same thing, somehow it was different. Because that's how much they wanted to believe in the innocence and good image of this woman, right? And even the people who did talk about her trash talk, it was like, oh, well, she's a competitor. She's a tough competitor. She's always been like this. She's always, talked trash and been really tough on the court and yada, yada, yada. She's been competitive since she was a kid. I remember seeing these videos on ESPN, people from her childhood just talking about how competitive she was and how people shouldn't take it personally when she talked trash, because that's just how competitive she was, right? So when you think about If you think about the WNBA in its current iteration as a universe, that moment between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark was like the big bang. That's what set all this into motion. So then you fast forward to the beginning of this college season. Caitlin Clark has a great start. From the very beginning of the season, it seemed like she was on pace to break records. She's got this long-range game that people are just absolutely obsessed with. She's getting her teammates involved. People are like, man, the talent on her team isn't special, but she sure does elevate them. People love talking about it. They love talking about the double-doubles. They love talking about the three-pointers. They love talking about Caitlin Clark and all the little girls who love her, right? Angel Reese, on the other hand, kind of stumbled out the gate. The first televised game I saw of them, I remember thinking about how Angel Reese was struggling, and she got a lot of criticism for it on social media. But what I was watching was a national champion being defended in a different way than she had experienced the previous season, and having to adjust on the fly. And that didn't really go very well at first. And then there was a whole situation that happened with her academically, right? And so that led to a little bit less of a glamorous start to this season for her. But it felt like from the very beginning of the season, anything that we heard about Angel Reese felt like kind of controversial. I feel like they didn't report as much on her good games. There was a lot of talk about her academic issues. There was a lot of talk about the fact that LSU didn't seem like the same team. But there wasn't a lot, even when she had a good game, it just didn't feel like there was a lot of coverage of it. Caitlin Clark, on the other hand, all I saw were these spots on, oh, look at all these little girls who say they want to be like Caitlin Clark. Look at this, renewed interest in women's basketball. Look at the sellouts. Look at the records. Everything was all good. And I'm not saying that's Caitlyn's fault, but I'm just saying the way these two women started off in the same situation, and then it felt just like the media coverage took them in two different directions, has kind of played into the situation that we're seeing now, to where Caitlin Clark is being offered a shoe deal, and it's controversial. Angel Reese still has a deal with Reebok, and for some reason, nobody's talking about it. Now I get it. It's been a while since Reebok put out shoes that people are excited about, all right? But I mean, it's an opportunity for Angel Reese to do that. Like, who in the WNBA is rocking Reeboks? Nobody, you know? So I think one of the most interesting things to me about this is that, like, this thing keeps happening sociopolitically in a lot of arenas, not just sports, that people kind of ignore. I have this homeboy named Denzel, and we talk a lot about these issues. And months ago, we were talking about just different celebrities and the demographics they represented. And we were like, who is out here representing white women? Like, not exotic, not I'm mixed with something, not I got a BBL, not I'm super into fitness, not just like, I'm just out here, a white woman in America trying to live. And that's what I do. And we were like, Taylor Swift. That might be one of the reasons why she's so popular, because average white woman, and they need a voice too, you know? And I feel like Caitlin Clark is definitely like in that same category, in the sense that like people are like, Caitlin Clark is a sensation. How is this happening? But we've seen this happen with brands, Stanley Cups. We've seen this happen with politicians and political movements where, you know, there might be a politician where we're like, well, we didn't expect that particular politician to win this election. Oh, but we didn't realize like all the white women would vote for that person, and they did. So now here we are. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, you know? I'm just saying, like, this is one of those demographics, it seems, where people don't really talk about what their interests are, but then it's like they show up in numbers to support what they love, and everybody's like, oh, where'd this come from? And it's like, well, you know, what looks plain and ordinary to you, that's somebody's identity to them, you know, and they are supporting that shit, you know? But a few things that go along with that image for Caitlin Clark is she's very safe. Like, even if you look at what she wore to the WNBA draft, like, it was a very nice Prada ensemble, but you can't really see her figure. Like, she's wearing a crop top, right? But nobody really knows what Caitlin Clark, her body looks like. Like, I've heard people call her cute. I've never heard anybody call her sexy, right? I can't think of, outside of what happened with her and Angel Reese, I can't think of a single thing that she's ever done that anybody would consider even the least bit controversial. Nobody knows what political movement she's behind. They just know she's a white chick from Iowa who loves basketball, and she's really fucking good. And that is safe. On the flip side, it seems like everybody who is presented as like a black woman who should or could be a star in the WNBA, there's some sort of controversy. Like, even with Angel Reese, just the fact that she is as beautiful and sexy as she is has been a point of controversy. And has she done anything immoral or illegal? Most of her pictures are pretty tame. Like, if you look at the picture that I put in the thumbnail for this video, that's from a photo shoot that she did with Vogue when she announced that she was going to the WNBA, that she was declaring for the draft. A lot of those pictures were very mature, very tasteful. That's how she usually presents herself. And even the dress that she wore to the draft, I wouldn't call that distasteful. Yes, it was low cut. It was bold. It's something not everybody would wear, but I thought she looked good. I didn't think it was trashy or anything like that. I thought she looked good. But there are some people who felt a way about it. There are some people who felt a way about other pictures that she's taken, or other things that she's done, or other things that she said. Like, the things that she's said and done have definitely been more often a point of controversy than anything Caitlin Clark has ever done. And I didn't even realize that was the case with A'ja Wilson until I was talking with some other friends about it. And one of my friends happened to mention, she was like, yeah, you know, you brought up all the points about A'ja Wilson's game, but even when she's covered in the media, they don't talk about that. They talk about her being drunk at press conferences and her lusting over Usher and like silly dances that she does at practices. And then you have to kind of stop and think like, oh yeah, this chick is goofy and has fun, but she's also a hell of an athlete. And so to me, that was just a testament from someone who supports the women's game but doesn't really watch it. It's definitely not an Aces fan, and is a casual WNBA fan at best. And based on the media coverage that they happen to catch, that is their impression of A'ja Wilson. And so it's like when you juxtapose those things, it just kind of makes you think, like, yes, Caitlin Clark is very good, and she definitely deserves every bag and every contract and endorsement that's coming her way. But the fact that other women in the WNBA aren't receiving comparable offers, let's say, can we honestly say that the mainstream media coverage hasn't had anything to do with that? That they couldn't change some of the things that are related to that? So it's a very layered situation. And these are things that I really believe, if the WNBA weren't growing at the pace that it's growing, we might not be addressing these things in the way that we're addressing them. That's why I mentioned WNBA growing pains in the thumbnail, because these are all things that are being brought to the light with the growth of the WNBA. So kind of how I talked about how the NFL and the NBA, they had to do a lot as they grew, and as the media rights deals got bigger and the endorsements became more common. So CBAs were negotiated differently. Salary caps were handled differently. Drafts were handled differently. Events have been handled differently. Fan relations have been handled differently, all because of growth of those leagues. The WNBA is experiencing that right now at an accelerated pace and a condensed timeline. And on top of that, the issues that I mentioned related to misogyny and queerphobia, those are still inserted in that as well. So it's like they're having to deal with the growing pains that every growing league has had to go with, but it's complicated because of the timeline, because of the pace of social media and the 24-hour news cycle, and also all the experiences of women that make this group of women who make up the WNBA such a diverse group. And not just make up the WNBA, but also the people covering it. Because like, while I'm so happy for the people who have seen, more opportunities, maybe some raises, new positions because of this, I really do feel for the people who have been covering the WNBA for years, and their work is just being looked over, or worse yet, stolen from, because there's somebody at some 3 or 4 letter network who decided yesterday that they want to cover the WNBA, and they simply don't know how to. And instead of giving you credits, they're just kind of learning from you and then using that to bolster their own repertoire of information. So that's where we are. I'm gonna check Twitter real quick just to see if anybody's been saying anything on there. All right, nothing in the section that I can see. Just a reminder, there's a section where Twitter allows you to leave comments on my live videos that I don't actually see. So hopefully y'all haven't been leaving comments there and I didn't see them. But yeah, we'll leave it right there. I'm gonna try to keep up this pace of doing shows twice a week. Next week, I don't know what's gonna happen because it's the draft. So I'm gonna be watching a lot of content, supporting my content creator friends. What time is it? I need to go soon. But yeah, I'm gonna be watching a lot of that content, supporting my content creator friends. I might be traveling, so I don't know what my schedule is gonna be like next week. But if for some reason I don't get to do 2 shows, hopefully it means that I took a trip to North Central Texas and got some information for y'all, and I'm coming back with some interesting things to share. So on that note, thank you so much everybody who watched. If you just hopped in at the end, please go to YouTube and watch the replay. Leave me comments, ask me questions. I love interacting with y'all. I appreciate y'all so much. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Please like this video. Help me get these numbers up. And that's it. So thanks for watching this episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm Jazz Monet, and I'm out.